We're going to move into our last discussion, though. We're going to be talking some head coaches, Brandon, and some ones that are on the hot seat. I'm going to start with one that you mentioned before we started recording, and we've talked about him a little bit here and there, but Mark Helfrich from the Oregon Ducks. Not a good season for Helfrich. 2-4, 0-3. And the one thing I saw in an ESPN short video last week when they were talking about a little hot seats is the exact quote was, and that college football playoff championship that they were in a while ago seems like it's been a lifetime away. What do you think? Helfrich on the hot seat? Is he going to get fired at the end of the year?
I think that right now it's not looking good for him. It's not looking good for him at all. I think that it just doesn't bode well that he's had all these losses, that the team has been unable to turn it around. I think that, I was trying to watch a little bit of the discussion between him and, who was it, Tom Rinaldi yesterday on ESPN college football, the college football pregame show, Game Day. And I wasn't able to really catch a whole lot, but I think it sounds like the players like him. I think it sounds like, it's going well for him with at least in terms of the players. It's just not there with the return that you need to see from the players on the field. And I think that after a while, a program such as Oregon's, where it was so good at one point, and that goes back to the Marcus Mariotas and everything like that, it needs to get back there. And if that needs to be with someone else, it needs to be with someone else. And if they need to make the change, they'll make the change. But I think that he right now is probably one of the coaches on the hottest seats at this point in the season, just because it's just been such poor play.
Well, and I'm going to throw this out as a joke, so before everyone kind of crucifies me for it, do you think some Oregon fans are kind of hoping that the 49ers do bad enough so that the 49ers can fire Chip Kelly, Oregon can fire Helfrich, and they can just bring Chip Kelly back to Oregon? Think some fans are thinking that way, that crazy way?
No, I don't think so.
But I don't think so. With this, on a serious note, with Ricky not trying to make big jokes, is the big thing that, to go off of your point, that I think is affecting this team is, his first year, 11-2, they win in the Alamo Bowl, pardon me. Then it's the 13-2 season, 8-1. But who was your quarterback? Marcus Mariota. Then after that, 9-4. It's a good season, but you lose in the Alamo Bowl. You finish second in the Pac-12, and then this year 2-4 with a 0-3, in the Pac-12 conference. And the big thing for me that I look at is I tend to look at, okay, how has the recruiting, how is that fared up overall over the years? And to me, I would, off the top of my head, I would say that Chip Kelly did a better job of just bringing guys in, because especially the quarterback position, Vernon Adams didn't do well. And now moving on from Vernon Adams, the thing for an Oregon offense to run, it's great to have a coach that has been in the system and, he's in the system here, he's in the system there, he's been in the system. But if you don't have that quarterback that they can latch onto, Chip Kelly had it for years. Then you had Helfrich had it with Mariota for those 2 years before Mariota went to that championship game and then went on to the NFL. He hasn't found that quarterback to be his guy after Mariota. And I think that's the biggest thing that the Oregon Ducks have been missing. And they've kind of gone away from their I'm going to say their identity a little bit, not blowing out teams anymore.
No, they're the team getting blown out. And that's the thing, is that, they won their first two games, against really nobody. And then they play at Nebraska. They lose by 3. They play Colorado at home. They lose by 3. They play Washington State. They lose 51-33. And then home against Washington, and they lose 70-21. Not only do they not have, that solid guy at quarterback, they don't have a very good defense. The pieces just aren't there right now for the Oregon Ducks at 2-4, 6th in the Pac-12 North division. It's just not going well at all. And moving forward, you're at Cal this upcoming weekend, then Arizona State, USC, Stanford, Utah, Oregon State, all teams that could give them some trouble.
Well, I mentioned the recruiting thing, and I did a little bit of research right now. Since Helfrich took over in 2013 to 2016, so the recruiting rankings coming into this past season, or the season that we're in now, I should say, here are the rankings, the state or the country rankings for Oregon. They were 19th, the 19th best recruiting class in 2013, the 21st best recruiting class in 2014, the 16th best recruiting class in 2015, and then coming into this year, the 28th recruiting class coming into the 2016 season. It's stuff like that if I'm a booster, if I'm someone looking at this program, I'm going, okay, Helfrich, you can do all the best things on the field, but you got to get kids into the door first. You got to get them into the door, because if we don't get them to play on the field, they can't do good things for us.
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely do. And I think that that's one of the things, too, that you have to take a look at is, is Oregon falling down in the recruiting process? And I think that that's something that people really do believe that they are. And by the stats that you're just throwing out there now, I would agree with that. And I think that that's something that they really need to turn around if they want to be able to be better for the future. And that's one of the things, too, that, does Helfrich have a plan of how to turn it around for the future? Mm-hmm. If he doesn't, that's a problem.
Well, it's one of those things where you look at a coach, and I just went 3 years before Helfrich, 2010, 13th overall, 2011, 12th overall, so 10 was 13, 11 was 12, and then 12 was 13. That's consistent with Chip Kelly. That is just consistent right there, but you're just outside that top 10. You're just outside of it. I can deal with being 12, 13, then dropping 19, 21st, 16, 28th. And the one point I was going to make is when you get to that fourth year that Helfrich is in right now, you look at this football team and you go, this is your team. Those 2 years that he had the 11-2, the 13-2 team, those weren't his team. That was Chip Kelly's team. Those were guys that Chip Kelly brought in his recruitment. Last year and this year are now, this year more so than last year, these are Helfrich's guys. These are the guys that he was apparently recruiting in 2013 and building that team for the future. And now we're seeing that maybe the recruiting's not as strong as it used to be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things is that you can play with someone's guys for so long and it can look good. Yep. And then when you finally get your own people in there, then no one's going to say, well, before they were probably saying, oh, well, he's not that great of a head coach because he's playing with, Kelly's guys. Or, maybe they overlooked that. But now knowing that it's going to be his guys that he's using, that he's going out there, that he's recruiting, that he's looking for the positions to bring them in, you can be able to make a good case to say, maybe it's him. Maybe it's him, and that's what ends up happening at the end of the day is all those things end up pointing to the head coach, and that's when people think that's when the athletic director says it's time to make a change.
Well, and that's exactly what it is. But before we spend the whole entire last part of the podcast on Oregon, give me another coach that you think is on the hot seat.
Hugh Freeze, and that's a sleeper. That's a sleeper on the hot seat. I can see it though.
I can see it.
Last year, they were 10-3 overall. This year, they're 3-3. They've already matched their season loss total from last year.
And losses to Arkansas and Alabama in conference. A loss where you had the lead in week one and then lost it to a rookie quarterback in Francois and FSU.
And I know I say Hugh Freeze as a sleeper. His last two seasons, he's gone 9-4 and then 10-3 respectively in 14-15. So do I actually think he's going to get fired? No, I do not. But already 3 losses at this point in the season. Ole Miss definitely will have to put the foot to the pedal and make sure that they end up with a really good end to the season. That's going to be crucial for them to be able to make sure that that they don't look at Hugh Freeze and start to question things there, because one bad season, I don't think that they're going to fire him. But if it doesn't end well, if it continues to go down the road of, this 3-3 path that they're on right now and continue to have more losses, that's not going to be good for the head coach moving forward, because then you have more chatter of, is he getting too old, not too old, but is he getting stale in that position and things like that. That is going to be the key.
I am going to give 2 points. 1 point is going to be on the side of a bad for Hugh Freeze. The other is going to be maybe a saving grace and why he won't get fired this year. The first one is, you look at everything, all the drama coming into this season, when you have the stuff about Kim Dichie that came out in the draft, obviously the stuff about Laramie Tunsil that came out in the draft. It didn't start out as a good year for Ole Miss. That's going on the negative side for Hugh Freeze. The positive thing for Hugh Freeze and what could save his job and he can fall back on, even though it would kind of be in some people's eyes him throwing a player under the bus, is he can look at it and look at Chad Kelly and go, hey, Chad Kelly hasn't been the same guy we saw last year. I haven't had my quarterback that I had last year. Chad Kelly he was completing 65% of his passes, down 3% this year to 62. Over 60% is still good, but it's still down a little bit than it was last year. Last year, over 4,000 yards. This time through 6, he is just under 2,000 yards at 1,849. He's averaging about the same amount of yards per play, but touchdowns. He had 31 and 13 touchdown to INT. This year, 14 to 5, and his quarterback rating is even down 3 points. So it's not one of those things where you can say, well, Chad Kelly has been a bust this year, hasn't been good. But what you might be able to say is, you know what? He hasn't been as good as he was last year, and if Chad Kelly was a little bit better, then maybe I would have won some more games. Maybe be a saving grace for Hugh Freeze. Maybe get him one more. I'm talking about it like he's going to get fired at the end of the year. Maybe give him one more year if he is on a hot seat.
And the only reason I say that, and I say hot seat, I'm more with him, I'm saying hot seat moving forward, because I don't think that, like I said, I don't think that he's going to get fired this season. But I do think that he needs to really have a good finish to this season, because if he does not, that will be the thing that opens up next year.
How about I give you this? Out of 4 flames, one being the coolest seat, 4 being the warmest seat, how many flames you giving Hugh Freeze right
one.
now? So it's on the mild setting.
Yes.
It's on that low setting, but it's kind of got, if you're cooking a good soup, it's got that little simmer there. That's like, I've cooked the soup, I just want it to be warm for when I go back for seconds. That's what Hugh Freeze has going. I'm going to throw out one that we talked about last week that fans are probably going to be like, why are they talking about him again? But I want to hear what you have to say, because I almost made this a topic for today, but we discussed, and you know what? We talked about him last week. I'm going to stop blabbering. Brian Kelly. 4 out of 4 on the flames of hotness for the hot seat. And you were saying before the podcast that he's running this team right into the ground, especially after pulling Kaiser in yesterday's game and putting in Malik Zaire.
Yeah, I think so. I think that Brian Kelly has really pressed the panic button. I think he's absolutely pressed the panic button. This is going to be probably the worst season. It is the worst season under Brian Kelly since he's been here at Notre Dame. And some people may say, other Notre Dame fans would say, Brandon, maybe you're overreacting. No, I'm not. You're underreacting if you don't think that he needs to go, because this is not good. This is not good, and this is now we're finding out what Brian Kelly is like when it gets hot under the collar. And right now he's hot and bothered. We know that. But he's not, I don't think, handling it the right way. I just don't think that Brian Kelly is I don't think he's any longer the answer at Notre Dame. And if you can't find anyone better, is Brian Kelly a good coach? Has he been a good coach? Absolutely he has. And is he a good coach? Yes, I do think he's a good coach. But I think that maybe his time at Notre Dame is up. Maybe it's time to try out something else. If you can, but that's the key. If you can't get anyone who you think is going to be better, don't make a change for the sake of change. Don't do that. And that's not what I want. I want to be able to try and get Les Miles. I think that would be a great move. I think that Notre Dame, though, needs to take a long, hard look at where they're at right now with this season and see where they want to be going forward, because that's going to be a key thing for them. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? And I think that right now is not where they want to be.
Well, and the big thing is Notre Dame's got a lot of history that you can come into it as a head coach. And I'm looking right now at our comments from a week ago on that segment with Brian Kelly. A lot of no way, hell no. There's one I will say, Dennis said, I'd fire Brian Kelly in a heartbeat if I had the inside scoop and knew that Les Miles was heading to South Bend. And are you kidding me? But the one comment that kind of struck me this week, that you being the Notre Dame fan, I want to read this comment to you from Rick. Thanks, Rick, for submitting the comment for us. I'm going to read it to you, and you kind of respond to it because you're the Notre Dame fan. You ready for it? Rick says, and I quote, Coach Kelly has kept winning records for Notre Dame. One tough season is jumping the gun. There's been quite a few seasoned players who left last year. Let's see the rest of the season, which is tougher than we all expected, and next year. Then you can really assess his performance. A lot of his remarks are taken out of context. End comment. What do you think?
I think that he's absolutely right in saying that Brian Kelly has had a lot of good winning seasons for Notre Dame. I thought that Notre Dame last year was really good, but everything's really good when it's going good, right?
But when it's going bad.
But when it's going bad is when you find out what people are like. And I think that we're starting to find out what the real Brian Kelly is all about. And I think that right now it's not going well. Did we lose some people from last year? Certainly we did. I mean, one guy in particular, Will Fuller. I mean, that was a huge loss for Notre Dame.
That's your deep ball threat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that it's huge to look at guys that we've lost. It's a big deal to take a look and see, okay, who have we lost? Who do we still have here? Who needs to step up in those positions? I do think I can understand that being able to wait, and see how next year goes. But I just think that with some of the stuff that has happened this season, I think that if you have an opportunity to try and get Les Miles, if you can find out in any way if Les Miles is interested in coming to Notre Dame, then you make that change. I think that Brian Kelly has made comments that are not good. I don't think they're being taken out of context. Mm-hmm. You make a statement because that's what you mean. It's not. I don't think it's being taken out of context at all. You're putting blame on some of your players where it's the game. The loss of the game is not their fault. It's not the center's fault because he's had a bad snap in a game that shouldn't have ever been played when you have 10 fumbles. That's not being taken out of context. Brian Kelly literally did say that he basically lost the game for them. So I think that Brian Kelly has done a lot of things wrong this season. And this rest of the schedule, if playing last night is any kind of view into how the rest of the season is going to go, it's not going to go well. Because right now Notre Dame can't score points, and their defense, even only giving up 17 points, is going to be, they're being asked to basically hold teams to 7 points because Notre Dame may only score 7.5. It's basically at that point right now. So I think that right now it's not going well for Notre Dame, and at the end of the season it better be, I think, analyzed, and really they need to take a long, hard look at where they want to go with this team and who they want as their leader.
Well, and that was just one I threw out. That was one comment that kind of sparked out to me, and I want to thank Rick again for submitting that comment. But I got one last coach that we're going to end this podcast with, kind of a lighthearted one, because I don't know how he still has a job. I still don't know how he has a job, and I'm going to go with Daryl Hazel from Purdue. How does he still have a job? I mean, I know you might be saying, well, Ricky, you're kicking a horse while he's down, but 1-11, 3-9, 2-10. Now he's, I guess 3-3 is better, but is Purdue really going to be a winner under Daryl Hazel? Are they really going to be a winner under Hazel? I don't think so. I think you should have moved on last year. You got to move on this year. I think that he's going to move on because I don't think Purdue. Yeah, 3-3 is, I'm going to say, cute, but you beat Eastern Kentucky, Nevada, and Illinois. Whoop-de-frickin-do. You beat Illinois in their first year under Lovie Smith. You got Nebraska, Penn State, Minnesota, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Indiana coming up. You could finish with three wins the rest of the way. What do you think, Swanee?
I don't think that Daryl Hazel has been a good fit at Purdue at all. I don't think he's been a good fit. I think that I feel like he's always nervous. I'd
be nervous too if I was the head coach of a shitty team.
Yeah, I just don't think that he's the right. I don't think that he's the right fit. I don't think he's the right fit there at all. I think that they definitely need to also be a team that takes a good hard look at how they want to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's that. I mean, that's
what do you want your
to continue
to be?
Exactly. Do you want to continue to have stuff like this happen? I agree with you. Where do you want this team to go? What do you want this team's identity to be? That's a really important question to be asked. If you're okay with just being meh, then you know what? Continue to be that way. But I think that if you really want this team to move forward, you will certainly change it up at the end of the season.
But like we close every podcast, Brandon, you got anything for Swanee's final thoughts, final minutes? We'll go final thoughts. We don't want to be like some other show that steals the final thoughts thing.
Well, yeah. So Halloween's coming up, obviously, everybody. And looking for that Halloween costume.
The Bone Zone? You go as Ken Bone?
Ken Bone. Basically, I just need to wear a red sweater.
You got to get the mustache and
glasses.
Maybe a fat suit. That's not shaming. That's the truth. I can say that I'm a fat guy myself. Wearing red today. I'm going as Ken Bone. This is the Ken Bone non-sweater edition.
Well,
for all seasons.
Yeah. So one of my friends, him and his girlfriend are going as Mickey and Minnie. Cute.
So you're going to go as Donald Duck.
And one of my friends is going as Pluto. Well, no, Goofy. Goofy, Pluto, I don't know, one of those guys.
Both dogs.
And then they said, oh, you should go as Donald Duck. No thanks. I don't really want to.
You can go as Porky Pig. Just be completely different. Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Screw Disney.
Yeah. So then they also threw out, oh, you could go as Donald Trump and you could just have one of your friends go, girl, and Hillary. They could be Hillary Clinton. Well, that's funny. That's hilarious. But
you can go as Bernie.
I could. I don't know if I'd look old enough.
Well, you just got to get one of the swimmer's caps, paint it tan, and then put some hair on the side.
Sure, of course.
They have wigs and skin caps for that.
They do. That's really getting into it. So one of my friends.
Brandon's like, I ain't got that much time, Ricky.
No, one of my friends, he sent me something, and he said he sent me a link to an adult inflatable riding gorilla costume at Target.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, Harambe.
Sexy Harambe.
Sexy Harambe.
You could be sexy Harambe.
I could. So I don't know. I'm throwing it out to you. I need your help. I would love some suggestions. Really, I'm serious. I would really love some suggestions, and not that I'll take them, but I would love to have them thrown out there.
I think for the channel, we should have you pick one of them and dress up as for the channel, and do a video podcast as that that costume.
Maybe.
We'll think about it. We'll think about that. But let Brandon know what costume he should go at this Halloween for his little parties, his little shindigs that he goes to. But that's going to do it for the Primetime Podcast. Let us know down below as well what you guys thought about the podcast today. If you're joining us on Blog Talk Radio, thank you guys for listening in again. If you're on YouTube, thank you for looking at our faces and watching us talk to you guys today. Or if you're one of those people that's like Ricky, it's great that I can see you, but I just click off and I listen to you guys like a podcast. Thank you for listening as well. This has been the Primetime Podcast. Hit us up on Twitter. Those are in the description. Also, Patreon, patreon.com/most valuable podcast. You like this video podcast? You want to see more of them? Check out the Patreon. Cool rewards, and that way, that support can help us to do more video podcasts like this for you. I want to thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll be back next week. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this MVP podcast. Follow us on Twitter @MostValuablePod for more great podcasts.